Beth, it might be the international break, but for football fans on Merseyside, there is the small matter of a Merseyside derby this weekend as Liverpool host Everton at Anfield in the WSL. What a huge game.
Yeah, massive game, and I think, you know, it's fallen quite nicely with the men's international break, and hopefully there'll be I think it was 27,000 that were there last season, so it'd be nice to break that record this season. But yeah, it's a big game and feels particularly big in the context of the way both of these teams have started the season. You know, Liverpool perhaps defied expectations a little bit. They've made a really strong start, 2 wins in the WSL, 2 clean sheets against 2 really top sides, and you know, Everton on the other hand have lost their opening 2 WSL games against opposition that, you know, perhaps they should be beaten. You know, perhaps doesn't tell the full story. I think Everton have been very unlucky at times. I still think that they have all the ingredients to go on and have a very successful season, but if there's any way that they could bounce back, I think a win at Anfield would be a pretty special way of doing that.
Obviously, you said they've had a difficult start to the season. I think after last season, when they probably consolidated the place in the WSL after a season of turmoil, the season before it was 3 managers they ended up going through. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised at how poor they've started the season in terms of results?
I am surprised, to be honest. I mean, I cover both Merseyside clubs, and if you'd have put a gun to my head at the start of the season and said, who do you think is going to make the better start, I would have said Everton. I think they were excellent at times last season. As you say, it was about consolidating the place in WSL. They'd finished 10th the previous season, which was obviously disappointing for them. But they brought in Brian Sorensen, who I think is a brilliant manager and has done very well to quickly implement a real exciting sort of dynamic brands of football. They've brought in some really good players over the past couple of transfer windows as well. So, like I say, it felt like they did have the building blocks to perhaps go on and better last season's finish when they finished 6th. I think sort of the opening game against Brighton, I was down at Walton Hall Park for that one. It was almost like they were undone really by making a bit of a slow start. They were slow out the blocks, and they were 2-0 down inside 14 minutes, and they rallied well. They got a goal back through Megan Finnegan, but the damage had already been done. So I think that sort of threw the game plan out completely, and that perhaps provides a little bit of mitigation for why they didn't win that one. I think yesterday, I've only caught bits of it, or Sunday rather, when we're recording this podcast. But I think they were unlucky again. I think they missed a couple of good chances early on. They had 2 goals ruled out for offside, one of them very contentiously. I don't think it was offside at all. They missed a penalty as well, and then the rebound was a brilliant save from Janina Leitzig, who's Leicester's goalkeeper. So they've had things not really going their way, and I think that hasn't helped. But you know, they have ultimately lost 2 games against opposition that, you know, you would be pegging them to beat. So it's a tough start, but I do think that they will, you know, they have what it takes to recover, and hopefully they manage to do that on Sunday in the Merseyside derby. In
terms of when you talk about transfers there and the players that they brought in, do you think there's still very much a case for work in progress? And this is kind of, you know, Brian Sorensen's 2.0 Everton team a little bit because of the changes that were made during the summer? Yeah,
absolutely. And I actually think in the transfer market, rather than, you know, I think they've brought in some good players, but I think what has hindered them perhaps is the players that they've lost. You know, they lost Ricky Savecki, who was one of the best defenders in the WSL last season. I thought a very underrated player, obviously a Denmark international. So they lost her. She obviously wanted to go and pursue other avenues, which was, you know, completely justified. She's a top player. She's gone over to the NWSL now in America. But the biggest blow was losing Gabby George so late in the transfer window. You know, I asked Brian Sorensen about that last week, and he said Manchester United made a sort of inquiry earlier in the transfer window. They said, oh, you know, we're not going to move for her, and then, you know, on the eve of deadline day they make that swoop and they activate a £150,000 release clause. There was nothing Everton could do at that point, and, you know, I think in one sense George deserves to be playing in a team that are competing for silverware. She's, again, for me, one of the most underrated players in the WSL, but a huge blow for Everton losing her. And I think, you know, to lose two such key players in defensive areas particularly has perhaps not helped the way that they've started the season. But yeah, I think, like you say, it's very much a work in progress. The youngest side in the WSL by quite some way as well, so they've got players who are sort of learning on the job and still picking up WSL experience. So once they've had a little bit more time to bed in, perhaps they might, you know, start to pick up some more results.
Obviously, we always say when it comes to Merseyside derby, no matter who it is playing, what age group, whatever, the form goes out the window. You know, it's a one-off hit and stuff like that. While the men's team have certainly struggled at Anfield in recent years, that has not been the case for the women's side, who claimed a 1-0 victory before the pandemic, and obviously last season, the game which I was at, claimed a memorable 3-0 victory in which Jess Park, I think, ran riot and showed why she's seen as one of the up-and-coming talents of the WSL. That also came off the back that game of Liverpool beating Chelsea on the opening weekend.
Yeah.
So is history kind of going to repeat itself? It'll be Liverpool making a great start, but then coming undone at Anfield?
Well, Everton definitely have previous for doing that. I mean, as well as Liverpool having won that game against Chelsea on the opening day last season, Everton actually lost away to West Ham, and so I think sort of the narrative going into that game was, you know, Liverpool are really on the up, and you know, very similar to how it is at this moment in time. So Everton, you know, have previous for going there and causing an upset. I think, you know, in the WSL, obviously, we're seeing more games played at big stadiums, but it's not every single week. So I think, you know, maybe when you're playing in front of your home crowd in particular, there is a little bit of pressure. We maybe saw that a little bit with Arsenal the other week when Liverpool beat them. So I think that there's probably more pressure on Liverpool, especially with the strong start that they've made to the season, which could work in Everton's favour. I think the way that Everton play, I think, you know, one thing to say about Brian Sorensen is he's very adamant. He wants them to play the same way, regardless of whether they're playing against Chelsea, whether they're playing against newly promoted Bristol City. They have an ethos that he's instilled into this team, and I think, you know, that ethos undoubtedly will lead them to creating chances. So it's whether they can put those chances away and tighten up at the back. I mean, Liverpool have kept 2 clean sheets, so they defensively look a lot more solid than they did last season. But I think I certainly wouldn't be writing Everton off going into this one.
In terms of, you know, playing at Anfield as well, it's a massive thing, isn't it? Because when you think of how far the women's games come, you know, to be getting 25,000-30,000 people at a Premier League ground is huge. Yeah,
massively. I think, you know, we want to see more than that. Both Liverpool and Everton last season only played 1 game at the men's stadiums. If you look at Arsenal this season, they're playing 5 of the home games at least in the WSL at the Emirates, and I think it will be nice in the years to come if we can see, you know, Liverpool and Everton stepping that up a little bit more and them getting the chance to play at the men's stadiums. Obviously as well when Bramley Moore opens up, that will be a real sort of occasion for Everton to get the chance to play there. So yeah, it's massive, and again, as I said earlier, it'd be lovely to see, you know, if people have got a spare afternoon, aren't sort of too tied up with international football to get down and support the girls, because, you know, I think one thing that's been perhaps levelled at the men's side at times in the past sort of couple of years is that they've maybe not always played for the shirt and given absolutely everything, and I think this women's team, certainly from last season, you know, they always give absolutely everything regardless of the result. So yeah, it would be great for people to come down and get behind them.
And of course, when the two sides did meet to go to some Park last season, there was a contentious decision in the second half with Liverpool. I think we can say, without our blue tinted glasses on, had a goal wrongly ruled out.
They did, yeah. Everton definitely got away with one. On that occasion, they had a goal chalked off. So perhaps there might be an extra bit of needle going into this one. They might want to sort of enact a bit of revenge, Liverpool. But yeah, I think it was a great game, actually, really entertaining, and I think probably showed that the two sides are pretty close, I think, in terms of their capabilities, and I think that's still the case regardless of the way both sides have started the season. I think they're still, you know, probably going to be vying for sort of a spot between 5th and 7th in the WSL this season. That's my sort of prediction for the season as a whole. So yeah, but that Liverpool might be itching to get one over on Everton after that one at Goodison.
And talking of contentious decisions, a Scouser in our ranks was sent off on Sunday from Leicester City. Very, very controversial, I think it's safe to say. So there might be escape from VAR in the Premier League, but there's still plenty of contentious decisions. Yeah,
it was a very bad day for officiating in the WSL yesterday. Alex Greenwood, as you referenced, was sent off for time wasting in the 37th minute, which, you know, we won't even get into that one. But yeah, that is the thing. You've seen a couple of WSL managers in the past couple of weeks calling for VAR to be implemented in the WSL, and it's such a difficult one because one thing I quite like about watching WSL games now is when a goal goes in, it's in, and you can celebrate, and that release that you used to get watching the Premier League, you can get that, whereas now I think most games you go to, you're waiting to see if it's going to be chalked off for one reason or another. So yeah, I think I think the officiating could play a part. I hope it doesn't. I really do hope it doesn't. One thing I will say, sort of, you know, a lot of the officials in the WSL are part-time, I think until that changes, you know, the standard of officiating isn't going to improve massively. But yeah, hopefully we're not going to be talking about contentious decisions come next Monday.
And obviously, just before we finish up, but I think for anyone, just not because it's a Merseyside derby, but for anyone who's interested in going along, it's well worth a visit, isn't it, to Watnall Park, because you go obviously for every home game, but it's certainly entertaining, you certainly get value for money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people maybe have preconceptions about what women's football is like, and of course it's different to the men's game, you know, but it doesn't mean it's still not a quality product, and the standard is improving all the time. I think Walton Hall Park is a great little venue. It's great atmosphere there. The fans are right on the pitch, and you know the supporters club do an excellent job at drumming up an atmosphere. So yeah, again, you know, obviously it's great if you can go to Anfield, but even better if then week on week you can continue going to women's games, whether that be at Walton Hall Park or Prenton Park. And
for anyone who doesn't know Betha, she's the Liverpool Echo's women's football correspondent, and she's well worth a follow on X, formerly known as Twitter, as she covers the Blues and the Reds at home every week, and also keeps a close eye on all the transfer gossip, news and everything else that's going on in the WSL. But Beth, thank you very much for joining me, and let's hope for a good game on Sunday.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm hoping for a good one.